Hey guys, what's going on? In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to create an event pipeline. What does this mean? I'm going to be showing you in AWS how to create an API gateway, sending data to Kinesis Stream, then to Kinesis Firehose, and finally into an S3 bucket. So that's going to be this first part of our pipeline here. API gateway, Kinesis Stream, Kinesis Firehose, and S3. So let's get started. The first thing you're going to want to do is to open up your AWS console. So go ahead and log in, and the first thing we're going to be going into is Kinesis. And we're going to go ahead and create a new data stream. I'm just going to name this data stream event pipe, like so, and we're just going to use one shard. Now shards can write 1,000 records per second, and in our case, since the API gateway can only write about 5,000 per second, this is going to be enough. If you need to scale this, I highly suggest checking out the AWS documentation on using CloudWatch alarms and CloudWatch metrics to trigger a Lambda function, which will then scale your number of shards accordingly. All right, let's go ahead and create the Kinesis stream. That might take a second to get created. So we'll go over now to our API gateway. Let's open that up. And let's create a new API. I'm going to call this event pipe and create our API. So before we go ahead and get started with any methods or resources, we are going to need to set our rule that allows API Gateway to write to Kinesis. So let's go ahead and let's actually just open up a new tab here, open up another AWS console, and we're going to go to Identity Access Management, or IAM. Here you can create roles or add policies to your roles. So let's go ahead and type in IAM. We're going to go ahead and we're actually going to create a role for our API gateway. So go ahead and find API gateway. And let's just give that the basic permissions for CloudWatch and etc. And we're going to name this tutorial API gateway. Okay, and let's go ahead and create that role. And now we're actually going to need to attach a policy to that role. So let's go ahead and click on it, attach policies, and we're going to give it Kinesis full access. There we go, select that and attach our policy. Now, going back to our API gateway, we can get started with adding resources and methods. So let's go ahead and create a new resource. And this is your URL path for your REST API. So we are going to go ahead and name this streams. Create resource. And our resource is going to need a method. So let's go ahead and add a get method. And this get method is just going to list all the available streams that we have on Kinesis. So setting this up, we're actually going to need to select AWS service, find your region for your Kinesis stream and the region you're currently working in. And you're going to go ahead and select Kinesis. Our method, since we're going to be accessing Kinesis, is going to be a post. And we're going to use an action. Now, actions here tell Kinesis to return certain things. In this case, we're going to use the list streams action. Now, our execution role, you'll have to go to IAM, and you'll have to go and find the role that we just created. And go ahead and copy that role to clipboard. We're going to go ahead and insert that into our execution role and save. Okay, now we're going to want to check out our integration request. So here's the path of the request of our GET request to Kinesis and back to the client. So our integration request is going to tell Kinesis what kind of data we're dealing with. So if we go into our HTTP headers, let's go ahead and add a header here. And we're actually going to tell it our content type. which is going to be application slash x dash AMZ dash JSON 1.1. Go ahead and check that off. And we're also going to need our mapping template, which is basically the JSON getting mapped into Kinesis so that Kinesis can have a readable format. Let's go ahead and use the recommended type here and add a mapping template and use the application JSON. Now we'll need to go ahead and write this application JSON, and in this scenario, we're just going to leave an empty JSON. Go ahead, hit save, and we're going to come back out to our method execution. And you can now go ahead and test this get method. This should list all your available Kinesis streams. There we go. Here's the one we just created, event pipe. And we're going to go ahead and create the rest of our API. So the next thing we're going to add is a resource. This resource is going to be our stream name. So I'm going to go ahead and say Kinesis stream. And if you note here, if you put curly braces in your resource path, it will actually act as a proxy, and you can grab this stream name that someone enters later along in your mapping template. So let's go ahead and do that, and let's go ahead and create the resource. Okay, and again, we're going to create a method here, and this method is going to give certain details about that Kinesis stream. So again, we're connecting to an AWS service in the same region, connecting to Kinesis. Again, a post method because we're sending to Kinesis that we want something. And again, this is going to be a different action now that we're telling Kinesis to do something else. So this action will be to describe the stream. And again, we need our execution rule for our API to access Kinesis. Again, go ahead and copy that if it's not copied already. Paste that in, save. And we're just going to go ahead and do the same thing for our integration request. So set your HTTP header. Go ahead and type out content type. And then we have our application slash x dash AMZ dash JSON dash 1.1. And again, we need our mapping template. Go ahead and select the recommended type, add our mapping template of application dash slash JSON. And this time we're going to add in the name of the stream in this JSON we're sending over. So how do we access that? We're going to type stream name. And then we're going to need this input from the URL path. So let's go ahead and write out input dot params and get that stream name. So right there is going to send this stream name to your Kinesis stream, and it's going to return the stream information or stream description. Go ahead and save that, and we're going to go ahead and test this out now. So this time you'll actually need the name of your stream. So let's go ahead and we can find the name of our stream through testing our streams. You'll see that the name is event-pipe. So let's go ahead into our other get for our stream name and test it out. And here in stream name, we'll list out event-pipe. So let's see if we get some information. And there you have it. We have our, most importantly, our shards and shard IDs. Here we only have one, which is more than enough for the data we'll be handling. The next thing we're going to want to do here is we want to add a path for giving Kinesis certain records to be inputted then into an S3 bucket. So now we're going to go ahead and create a resource under your stream for actually inserting a record through Kinesis, which will eventually arrive in an S3 bucket. So let's go ahead and call this one record. And we're going to enable API gateway cores or cross-origin resource sharing, which allows you to access your API gateway URL path from another website. So go ahead and create your resource. And we're going to need a method again, but this time we're going to use put. Kinesis typically works with put when you use it as a proxy as such. So let's go ahead and configure our put method. Again, we're looking at an AWS service in US East 1. Our service is Kinesis. Our method here, again, is still a post method because we're talking to Kinesis. And our action now is going to be a put record. And our role still has not changed for allowing API to access Kinesis. So go ahead and save that. Now we're going to get to the important part. Our mapping template is now going to change in our integration request. So go ahead into your integration request to your header, add header. This will be the same as before, content type. You're going to have application slash x-amz-json-1.1. Go ahead and check that off. And now we need our mapping template. Our mapping template is going to have a couple different things here. One of which is going to be the actual data itself that we hope to pass through into an S3 bucket. Another thing is going to be our stream name, which we'll get from our URL path, just like last time. And our last thing, which is going to be new here, is going to be our partition key. Now, a partition key is an integer that's hashed in order to arrive at a shard number. So let's say, for example, that you have multiple shards. In this case, we have just one. Now, if you gave the partition key the number 1, and you did that again, both data would map to the same shard. However, a different number could map to a different shard. So let's go ahead and specify application/JSON. Okay, so let's go ahead and write our JSON that's going to be passed to our Kinesis stream. So let's go ahead and first we're going to specify the stream name. That's going to be our input parameter stream name passed down from the URL path. Next thing we're going to need is the data that is actually being sent. So let's go ahead and we're going to need to base64 encode that. And we're going to get out the JSON input, and that will be listed as data. The last thing we need is a new line base64 encoded CG ==. Now our partition key will be specified from our input path as well. And in our JSON, that's going to be called our partition key. Okay, go ahead and save that. And we're going to go back to our method execution, and we're going to test this out with our event pipe. And our request body will be data, testing, partition key 1. Go ahead and test that. And there you have it. Our response body will be the sequence number and our shard ID. So everything looks good so far. Now we need Kinesis to write to S3, but Kinesis Stream cannot do that directly. So Kinesis Stream is going to go ahead and send that over to Kinesis Firehose, and Kinesis Firehose is then going to be used to write to S3. So that being said, we're going to need to create a delivery stream in Kinesis Firehose. So let's go over to services, type in Kinesis, And we're going to go ahead and create a delivery stream. So I'm going to go ahead and specify our delivery stream name as event pipe delivery. And our source is actually going to be a Kinesis stream. So let's go ahead and select our event pipe and hit next. So here we have the option of transforming our data with Lambda. However, I'm actually going to invoke a Lambda function as a trigger in response to data being inserted to our S3 bucket. And I'll explain in later videos why I do that. Another thing we can use is converting our record format. Some might suggest Apache Parquet for columnar data formatting. That can then be used with AWS Glue in order to overlay your schema when using something like Athena. And you can create AWS Glue crawlers, which can also be joined with ETL in order to transform your data. So we're just going to hit disabled for both of those, and we're going to continue. And we want our destination then to be an S3 bucket. So let's go ahead and create a new S3 bucket. And this is going to be our, let's call it event pipe data. And it shows here that the prefixes by default are going to be based on the year, month, day, and hour when it delivers the file to S3. So we're going to go ahead and hit next. And here we have our option to set our buffer size and buffer intervals. So what this really means is that our data is going to be collected and then batched over to S3. So our batch can be based on whichever comes first, the buffer size or buffer interval. Personally, I'm going to bring this down to our minimum so we can see it in action of 60 seconds. And I'm going to go ahead and leave our buffer size because I don't believe we'll hit it. For the sake of size, I'm actually going to compress this in a gzip. And I'll show you how to open a gzip file in a Lambda in a later video. I'm going to also create a new IAM role, which will allow us to write to our S3 bucket. So let's create a new IAM role, and we're going to call this event pipe S3 delivery and hit allow. And this will basically give that Kinesis firehose the ability to write to the S3 bucket. Let's go ahead and hit next, little overview, and we will create our delivery stream. There we go, our stream's been created. So the last thing we have left is to actually deploy our API for testing. So let's go ahead and go back to API Gateway. And we're going to hit our event pipe. And we're going to go ahead and deploy our API. In a new stage, I'm going to name these all test. And go ahead and hit deploy. Now that it's actually been deployed, we have the URL to which we can send our put request or our get request, depending on the URL path. So let's go ahead and test this out. So we're going to go ahead and copy this URL, and we're going to go ahead and post it into a new tab. And you'll see the default link will give us a missing authentication token. So this is the default. You might think of this as a 403. This is the default whenever the path specified does not actually exist. So because there is no get on test itself, we're going to need to type in test/streams. And here you'll have your stream names and if we have more streams. Going even further, we can specify event pipe, and that should get us our data about our shards and our Kinesis stream. And now if we want to write to this, we'll need to test it in a different way since we're now using a put method. All right, so I've gone ahead and opened terminal here, and I'm just going to enter a couple lines here so you can see it. And what we're going to do is we're going to type in HTTP put, enter our URL to our API /streams slash event dash pipe slash record. And the way we're going to do this is by typing data equals, we're going to write testing space our partition key. We're just going to set that equal to 1. And we should get the same response as when we tested it in our API gateway. And there you have it. We have our shard ID and our sequence number, just like earlier. And eventually, if you give it enough time, you can open up your S3. And you'll see the bucket created earlier, event pipe data. And this bucket will show up with your data after the allotted 60-second buffer. All right, so 60 seconds has gone by, and we see that our Kinesis Firehouse has written to the default path of the year, the month, the day, and there is our file with our UUID, and it is in a gzip format. All right, so that's it for today. We just created an event pipeline, started at an API gateway to Kinesis Stream, to Kinesis Firehose, and ended up in an S3 bucket in a gzip format. If you stick with us in our next videos, I'll show you how to create a Lambda function triggering based on the file upload to our S3 bucket. We're going to go ahead and transform that data to look like something that Athena can take in, and Athena will then use SQL queries on our S3 bucket data lake. So that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.